and I would agree that we want lower rates across the board. One of the challenges is how do we get there? And what I wanted to rebuttal on was actually the how in regards to what you just mentioned, which is opening up more opportunity for community solar. Because when you talk about equity, we're talking about the reality of making this accessible across the board. Some folks are very fortunate to have a $10,000 to $15,000 solar system on their home, but the average renter, the average person, 1.9 million people in Georgia look at or below poverty. They're renters, some of them are homeowners, and they're not able to afford it the same way. So I just want to make sure it's clear that there's a lot that goes into making sure these rates are lower, which includes voting in every election for more public service commissioners.
Can I riff on that, Reverend Jones?
One more riff, and we're gonna change the situation.
I like Daniel's point, as often is the case. I mean, I do. But I would say this: there is a way right now that we can do this by working together with our Republican commissioners. When I lost the race in 2018, I got a call from one of those Republican commissioners, Tim Eccles, and he said, "John, you ran a great race. There's nobody in Georgia who knows energy as well as you do and I do. You're a Democrat, I'm a Republican. Would you do a radio program with me?" And I said, "Sure, Tim, I'll do it." Got to know Tim better, enjoyed our time together, and we talked about, and I lobbed as many Democratic bombs as I could at him, but we figured out how to work together. And there's a vote there. And Robert Bryan in Savannah, good guy. If Robert can win that, suddenly there's 2 Democratic votes. We got to win some of these elections and figure out how to work with our Republican counterparts. And if we can't, to expose them for the utility enablers, the monopoly enablers that they are. And you do that, I guarantee you votes will change. And if you don't think I'll stand up there and be beating on the drums, I'll do it.
Okay, so let's talk. Thank you very much, Mr. Noel, Mr. Blackman, and Mr. Noel. Let's bring it down to the man and woman on the street. Okay, let's put this in plain language, because Mr. Blackman talked about basically helping people to understand and making more visible the Office of Public Service Commission. Right now, in the African American community, the Public Service Commission is probably the pastor, the deacon, because we get the calls when there are issues with utility bills, when there are issues with water concerns and various utility concerns. And I would posit that would be because of the fact that the pastors are there and, the church is there to help you with your spiritual life and with much of your physical life as well. But I would also posit that it's because not many people know who the Public Service Commissioner is or what they do. I know my congressman. I know my state senator and my state representative. I know my city council person. But to the man and woman on the street, what is the Public Service Commission and how, and we've talked about it in the macro, but let's talk about it in the micro. How can you make life better for Mrs. Green? And why does she need to know you? That's one. And two, what are you going to do to make sure that Mrs. Green knows you and knows about you and knows your resource?
I'm happy to take it.
Go ahead, Mr. Nolan.
Is that okay, Mr. Blackman?
Yes, sir.
Thanks, sir.
Well, generally, what I do is when my wife takes it over, I just say, "Babe, you got it. You've already taken it."
Okay, hey, I like that. You can call me baby anytime there. I have been doing this for 20 years. It is what my business is. Now, mind you, our customers tend to be more commercial, more industrial, more government. We work around the country. That's all true. But we also have and have had residential customers. And our job, our company job, I've stepped away from my company, Atlanta-based company, is to go in and save people money on their power bill, the Mrs. Joneses of the world. And so what I really want to do is I want to spend my 6 years as a commissioner going all over the state, just like I did my 2018 campaign, like I'd love to do now for this program, to educate people on energy, how to use it, how to use less of it, how to be more Spartan about it. And I'm convinced, LED bulb giveaways, lowering utility basis rates, all of these sort of things, I think we can do that And it is something of which I'm uniquely suited to do because it's my education and it's my business ability.
Mr. Blackman.
So I grew up in Columbus, Georgia. Muskogee County, Georgia is where I grew up, and I've lived in Savannah, Georgia. I've traveled in and out of the election season throughout the state, to Lowndes County, to Burke County, Georgia, to Reagan County. I mean, I've been all over the state. The folks in Juliet, Georgia, right now that are dealing with coal ash in their drinking water. The folks in Burke County that's been fighting against the growth and the expansion of Vogel. And here's the reality. When you think about the struggle, to your point, most folks know their congressman, their U.S. senator, they know those bigger positions. But when it comes to, for instance, folks that are struggling, you mentioned, and I want to thank the Concerned Black Clergy and all the interfaith organizations that are in the space, but all of us would agree that there are two main requests from parishioners and community folks all the time. Even if you look at folks like Joyce Dorsey, who's over at FACA in Fulton County, and what happens is, rental assistance or mortgage assistance and utility assistance are the top two requests consistently across the board. The challenges are most folks don't know the programs that exist or the opportunities. For instance, we talked a lot about COVID-19. What we didn't talk about was the $900 million that was put into that stimulus package for LIHEAP, which is Low Income Heat and Energy Assistance Program. We're not talking about that. We've got to get, number one, with our small businesses. I'm going to be around coastal Georgia. I'm going to be in mountainous Georgia. I will be in rural Georgia, in metro Atlanta. There's no part of the state that we cannot go in and work, one, with our business owners, our small business owners, especially our minority business owners in places like coastal Georgia that don't know the accessibility. John mentioned earlier, 3% of minority contracts for Georgia Power and Southern Company are to minority contracts. We've got to increase that number. We've got to educate. We've got to promote these opportunities. And then you asked about what will I do to make folks know who I am. I don't think I can veer off of the question, the response I gave earlier, which I cannot govern from Atlanta. We've got to go around the state. There are 159 counties in Georgia. We're going to have to get out of that office, get in our car, fill it up, and go to these counties, spend the night, down up in Raven, and spend the night down in Albany. We've got to go around the state and make sure people know about it. So the next election cycle, and here's where I'll close on this question. John and I are very fortunate, and whoever makes it into November, to have this third on the ballot. Okay, now when you start talking about 2022, when the governor and lieutenant governor and secretary of state and attorney general are on the ballot, public service commissioner goes from about 3 on the ballot to down to about 11 or 12 on the ballot, which means the further down ballot you go, the more challenging it is. We've got to take the next 2 years to make sure we position Democrats to run across the state, and the 6 years of our term to make sure that this never happens again, and we elect the right people who will stand for the people and not the profits of utility companies.
Wonderful. And I noticed, Mr. Blackman, that you talked about going around the state. You said you'd go in your car. You wouldn't go in a private jet that is owned by the state. So that perhaps points to your environmental savviness.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Noel, let me ask you this, and then I'm going to come back to you with the same question, Mr. Blackman. Mr. Noel, if you become the nominee, what's your plan for motivating minority voters?
Well, I think a lot of that's going to, let's just be honest, a lot of that will be driven by the presidential. We have a president, who is motivating, to say the least, motivating to get his tickets out of there. But insofar as what I would do, it would be to talk to people about what I could do for them. And I've itemized that a little bit, but that is essentially educating on energy efficiency, how to save power, educating them, and people really resonate. I think Reverend Jones and Mr. Blackman have both made great points about this. People don't know what the Public Service Commission is. And when you just boil it down and say, these are the guys that regulate Georgia Power Company. And they do other things, but these are the guys that regulate Georgia Power Company. People go, oh man, I can't stand Georgia Power Company. I'm like, well, right. You think your bills are too high? Yes. And so what we've got to do is say, we are the boss. You don't get to get a monopoly and then make your own decisions. You get a boss. That's been my strong suit of 20 years, and working with our Republican colleagues until we vote them out. is another thing that I am well apt to do.
Mr. Blackman, same question. If you're the nominee, how would you motivate minority voters?
With all due respect to John, I would take a different approach. I don't think it's enough for us to, and I'm not trying to make a statement based on what he was portraying. However, I think that the Democratic strategy nationally and in the state of Georgia for too long has been that black folks or minority communities are going to be motivated by who's on the ballot. And I don't think that Trump or the Republican agenda has been enough to motivate. I think we've got to not take communities of color for granted, and we've got to go and ask folks. But the bottom line is this: Public Service Commission, the history of the Public Service Commission, there's been one African American. He was not elected. He was appointed by Governor Roy Barnes in 2001. That gentleman's name was David Burgess. David Burgess is out of DeKalb County, and since David Burgess's appointment and not election, we have not had another person of color serve on the Public Service Commission. In the United States of America, there are 468 Public Service Commissioners. Last time I checked, 22 of them are African American. Okay, out of 468, less than 10% of the individuals that serve are folks that look like me, or folks that have come from the communities that I've come from. Now, while I don't think that race should be the only motivating factor, I do believe that people identify when they can see someone and they can see things that have their community best interest. I think one thing John is absolutely spot on about is the fact that, speaking to the needs of people is something our Republican friends have not always done. Here's the bottom line. When the rate increase hearings were going on 6 months ago, I organized two church meetings, one with a member of the Concerned Black Clergy, Reverend Timothy McDonald. We held hearings, we held public forums in churches because we fundamentally understood that when we think of the social justice impact, we're thinking of, and when I say we're, I'm saying minority communities are looking at the overall impact. For instance, the Flint water crisis, we're looking at issues like, for instance, when Hurricane Katrina happened. We identified catastrophic moments. We've got to start presenting opportunities early and solutions. So for me, once getting past the primary, I would specifically go to South Georgia and meet some of the black farmers and talk about biofuel. I would go to the minority business communities around the state in Chatham County, in Dougherty County, in Muskogee County, and I would speak to folks about what their needs were. I think one of the biggest mistakes candidates make is they listen to respond and not to understand. I'm not going to go to folks in Georgia telling them that I have all the ideas for their needs. I'm going to go to those vocal folks and ask them, what is it that you would like me to add to my agenda if it's not already on there? How can I help? And we're going to motivate them together. Stacey Abrams in 2018 did a phenomenal job representing and bringing more folks into the fold. We cannot drop the ball in 2020 and lose a lot of that momentum. I think I'd be the right person strategically positioned to have a message that more minority communities to buy into.
Mr. Noel brought W. Paul Bowers his compensation of $13,000 a day. Not bad for a day's work. Into this discussion. Of course, that's the chairman, president, CEO of Georgia Power Company. And so I would imagine that if I were to visit Mr. Bowers' home, there's some solar energy there. My question would be, how can we provide the same access to solar energy in Bankhead that we have in Buckhead? How would both of you, and I'll start with you, Mr. Noel, what's your plan to make solar energy available to all?
Well, I represented Bankhead and Buckhead in the state house, and so I know that community very well. I've lived and still retain a residence on Bolton Road, and I have solar on my road. But I'm fortunate enough to do that, and I think your question is important. So what I would propose is that we make the burden of adopting solar a little less so. For so long, Georgia Power had a rate structure that actually was discriminatory against solar adopters. Change that. For a long time, we had no subsidies from the state. So as the PSC, you would go to the state and say, hey, can we get a little subsidy here? Can we get a little subsidy besides the federal subsidy? That's two. Three, We have houses of worship. I was giving away masks in Savannah 2 weeks ago at a church. I looked at their old lighting, and it was terrible. And I thought, we need to do energy efficiency projects in here. We should be creating funds, revolving. Simple and business friendly. Republicans can buy into this deal. Ways to address getting solar into people who otherwise may not be able to buy it.
Yeah, but isn't that gonna cut into Mr. Powell's $13,000 a day?
That's the beauty of the PSC. We get to say what that is.
Mr. Blackman, same question.
I mean, look, the reality is, and with all due respect to the Public Service Commission, I think last year they approved somewhere around 5,000 solar for net metering. They increased the number, and let's be honest. I mean, you know, we're not doing enough as it relates to addressing the barriers to entry. And I think that the best way for me to articulate this for our community is, one, you got to look at lack of access. Like, there's certain points I'll point out. First, lack of access. When you look at a lot of these communities that want to go solar, the barriers to be able, as I mentioned earlier, to have an extra $10,000 to $15,000 sitting around solar out their house, it directly speaks to the fact that we need more community solar. We need to be able to have folks plug in to a public utility that will offer them that the access to have access to clean renewable energy. Also, we got to look at the burden between renters versus homeowners. Okay, so it's easy for us to make this case. Both of us are great guys. It's easy for us to say what we think the Public Service Commission should do and how we're going to get there. But we've got to think some of the burdens that folks are facing are tremendously incumbent on their ability to actually install them. If you live in an apartment complex, or if you live in a home that you may be renting, there are barriers to be able to do that. Also, I think like the tax burden and the lack of understanding for what products are actually available. The city of Atlanta actually has done a phenomenal job with messaging and communications around this issue. So for me, I think what it would come down to is making sure that we're working with churches, and again, great example from Concerned Black Clergy and your member churches and institutions. We need to, one, work to make sure that our communities know what products are available. Two, how to access those opportunities. But then three, and I think both John and I would agree, this is not a one-person show. We've got to go and pull our brothers and sisters that are part of the legislature to the side so that policies can go in alignment with the decisions that are made at the Public Service Commission that specifically speak to changing the way we legislate and make laws that give folks accessibility, whether that's helping remove the tax burden, increasing the tax opportunities or removing the access to capital burden. We've got to start working with coalitions and building advocates with those small minority-owned businesses and with schools and with community leaders to go and advocate on behalf of families that can't afford solar.
Thank you very much, Mr. Blackman. We've got about 22 minutes left, and so Madam Administrator Burns, I'm going to ask one more question. I want you to get prepared to come back and to talk to give us the protocol as we open up the forum to our community partners. Okay? So as we open up the forum to our community partners, I want you to come and say that. But let me just ask this question of both Mr. Blackman and Mr. Noel. How will you work with the faith community, churches, and other faith groups to help them to be educated and in terms of the processes of the PSC? And how will you help them to educate our ratepayers?
Well, I'll go ahead and start with that answer if it's okay. And first of all, I'll mention members of that organization, Reverend Timothy McDonald, Reverend Gerald Thurley, folks that have come before me that really had an interest specifically in working with the community, who have been in meetings with Georgia Power. As a matter of fact, I was a part of a religious community meeting with the Concerned Black Clergy and with Southern Company with their chief financial officer. And we have had these opportunities. When I turned 21 years old, Alex Bussey signed me up and got me my first membership with Concerned Black Clergy. I have never to this day strayed away from where I've been rooted in, which is being a liaison between the churches, the communities, and our interfaith organizations. I've created pipelines between the Atlanta University Center and Fort Valley State University, Albany State, which are historically black colleges and technical colleges. I have already worked to establish that. One of the things I would do that would go beyond the work that I've done over the past few decades as it relates to that is I would specifically work on two areas. Number one, there needs to be a regional, we need to split up these 159 counties into about 4 or 5 regions. And I have an idea to do something called a ratepayer school. And Michigan State University has something called the Institute of Public Utilities, where they bring folks in and they teach them rate making 101. And they speak to them about how the process works. I want to do that regionally. Imagine having Metro Atlanta or Coastal Georgia with a meeting where we convene a group of folks and we take a day where we go A through Z on how rates are made, what's in the pipeline, what an integrated resources plan is. We've got to educate the community. Lastly, I'm going to make sure that on top of convening folks around the state through the articulation of my service as an elected official, we want to make sure that we directly speak to the folks, and that is going to be through a very comprehensive, targeted social media campaign where we're going to give updates and actions, including full transparency. I have already pledged as a candidate to not take a dime from fossil fuel executives to fossil fuel PACs. On top of that, I've made a commitment that going forward, we'll make sure it's transparency. So if I get elected, or when I get elected in November, from day one, we will know that there will be no meetings or no lobbyists giving me or my family any gifts. From day one, there will be transparency. We'll work with organizations, and we'll let people know who we're meeting with, why we're meeting with them, so that there aren't these side deals being made that are neglecting the fact that churches, folks have paid $100 a year for the last decade, $1,000 out of each household. Churches and small businesses have paid in excess of $10,000 to $12,000 over the last decade. What could churches and pastors and deacons and religious leaders do with an extra $10,000 to $12,000 right now, given the circumstances? We've got to change that, and that's a part of the process that I'll make the transparency and service with our churches and our leaders.
Mr. Blackman, thank you very much for that. And as I listened to that, I could just see a lot of government relations people just cringing at the fact that they won't be able to give you a Christmas present. Mr. Noel, Mr. Blackman, thank you. Let's hear now from our community partners, and as we prepare to do that,
I don't know, John, did you want to, I'm sorry, I didn't know.
No, that's fine.
Oh, you know what? John, yeah. I'm sorry. Mr. Noel, please.
No, that's okay. I was actually wanting Miss Kuhn to respond. Oh, sorry, Miss Kuhn. I'm sorry, you're not in the race. I forgot. I'm picking on you, Miss. I'm picking on you, Reverend Jones. I'm just kidding.
You got me.
And Daniel, thank you. Yes, sir. I'll make my answer brief, and that is churches, mosques, synagogues, these and other religious institutions. These are places of education, in addition to all the other things that they do. They are places of education, and people come to them, as Reverend Jones mentioned a moment ago, they come to them looking for answers, for help. And in my time at churches, in various churches, I have found that people ask those questions. So how do I lower my power bill? How can I be helped with this? So I would like to see, and I think Damon is really onto something, an educational program. I love the boot camp idea, spreading this educational program. Why can't we do that in our churches? It doesn't have to be just our technical institutions or other places. Let's do that in our churches, and then let's see who wants to sign up for energy efficiency programs in their homes. There is money for low-income individuals to make energy efficiency improvements. It just so happens that Georgia Power, in their great, and the Public Service Commission, in its great largesse, funds about $2 million. It's a pittance. It's nothing. It's an embarrassment. So that needs to be $20 million. And through those funds, then we can say, hey, let's help upgrade your home for energy efficiency. And let's start that revolving loan fund for religious institutions. All those things can be done right at the church, mosque, and synagogue level.
Thank you both for your responses. Madam Administrator, you want to come and just give us the protocol and let's open it up.
Yes, sir. We want to take the first step Mr. Daniel Blackman and Mr. John Moore for taking out your time to come and share your position, your passion, and your platform. At this time, if you have a question, we would ask you to please either raise your hand or type your question in the chat box. At this time, if you have a question, we ask that you raise your hand or type your question in the chat box. At this time, Mr. Moderator, there are no questions. We want to just encourage you to know that Concern Black Clergy is a 501c3. We are nonpartisan and we do not endorse any candidate.
Okay, Mr. Noel?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's come back to you. What's your long-term plan to bring clean energy to Georgia?
You asked a good question. Georgia Power constitutes one of the largest CO2 emitters in the world. Their planned share is, I think, the number one CO2 emitter in the United States of America as a utility. And so I see these as larger issues in reducing our carbon footprint and climate change. We see other public service commissions appointed or elected all over the country, making progressive legislation and actions that are helping to reduce the carbon footprints. All of this is interrelated. Asthma rates, COVID relates, they're all related to pollution. And the more coal we're belching and the more nat gas we're burning and all these other stuff, and we're not transitioning quick to a low carbon or green economy, not creating those jobs instead of creating them in the old economy, those things have ramifications. So my goal as a commissioner would be to take what is a very slow trend to green and accelerate it to a rapid jog, run. And I know I can do it as a commissioner because there's only 5. We have 2 seats up. I believe Democrats can win both of those seats. An African-American candidate out of Savannah, good guy. I think he and I could both win these in the general election. I can't wait to take on my Republican opponent who's voted pro-coal for all the 20 years he's been on the commission and been a lack to the Georgia Power and the utility companies for the previous 20 years he was in the legislature. This guy, I got my sights on. Let me at it.
Mr. Blackman, your long-term plan to bring clean energy to Georgia?
There's an African proverb that says, if you want to run fast, run along. If you want to run far, run with others. So my long-term plan is to bring more people into the fold. I am thankful for the Georgia Conservancy. I'm thankful for the Sierra Club. I'm thankful for the Southern Alliance for Clean Energy and for all these great organizations that exist. But I want to be very clear. This is not about drawing a line in the sand. I know that Georgia Power and Southern Company is watching, and they're looking at both John and I right now and any other person because of their strategic interests. I want to be very clear that our long-term plan is very much centered around our ability to deploy more access and opportunities for clean energy. The only way we're going to get there is by educating folks and building a workforce of the future. I cannot stress enough the tremendous importance of our communities going into our technical colleges and our HBCUs and making sure that we're steering young men and women into clean energy jobs. We can't keep talking about we want this clean energy economy and a solar future if we're not building the workforce that can support that infrastructure. Case in point, most of the young men and women that went to Georgia Tech for engineering and for technology driven degrees ended up leaving Atlanta, leaving Georgia, and going to Silicon Valley. Well, this can be the Silicon Valley itself as it relates to clean and renewable energy. We've got to position them, educate them, and work with our schools K through 12. In my county, Forsyth County, Georgia, we have a school right now that has an environmental track for high school students that they take from 9th grade to 12th grade that introduces them to clean energy jobs, solar, wind power, biofuels, and other opportunities. It's a public school, not a private school. Why can't we replicate that model in Fulton, DeKalb, Clayton, Muskogee, Early County, all over the state? So my long-term plan is to bring more folks into the fold, to bring folks from mosques, synagogues, and from churches and other religious organizations to utilize these spaces to communicate directly with the community. And then lastly, continue to build a strong coalition that's not just in the best interest of the ratepayer. Let's be honest, Georgia Power is one of the largest employers in the state of Georgia. This includes our union brothers and sisters that exist and that are out there. We want you to know, I want you to know right now that I respect, I honor, and I appreciate our unions, our union workers, and our union jobs. We don't want to leave them behind. We want to bring them into the future with us and create new opportunities for a new economy that gives us clean air and clean water. Thank you so much for the question.
Thank you. Madam Administrator, was there a community question?
Yes, we have one question. Ms. Liz, if you can unmute yourself.
Yes, very briefly, I can't recall which one of you, but you mentioned that renters typically don't have the option of solar power, and a lot of minorities do rent. Are there any plans or land install and pay the cost to put solar power in on the rental? But are there any plans? I haven't heard of anything, so that's why I'm curious if there are plans to create such an incentive for landlords so that their tenants can have energy plus the environment benefits.
Yeah, so there are a lot of movements under the LMI movement, which is low and moderate income movement around solar deployment and access to solar. So one of the ways I want to incentivize renters is follow the model that mirrors Keisha Lance Bottoms and her sustainability office, where a young man by the name of John R. Seidel is doing great work in bringing these opportunities. The only way we're able to do it, though, is to be able to look at models that work around the country. Now, I haven't seen a lot of them, but one of the things we can do with the Public Service Commission is work with the organizations that directly speak to them and offer them. That's why I mentioned earlier, the only way that John and I, we've got great ideas. You know, it's easy for me to say we've got to bring more low and moderate income families into the fold. But the reality is we would be overseers as an elected official for the Public Service Commission. In other words, from day one in January of my service, I would be overseeing hearings and working with the appointed staff to make recommendations, hear from, and determine what we support as it relates to the energy and utility industry. We're going to have to step out of that space and help the state representatives on both sides of the aisle, both state senators and state representatives. We've got to craft those policies. One of them that I have seen is in the city of Los Angeles under Mayor Eric Garcetti, which specifically works with incentivizing them through rooftop solar incentives, tax credit, and then also a relief on new construction building that offers low and moderate income housing. So I think we need to look at models that have worked, implement them how we can in Georgia by speaking to our legislature, taking some of the policies. Let's be honest, like what works in Los Angeles may not work in Atlanta or Athens, but we can dang sure craft it to meet the needs of folks and begin to set a trend that shifts us in the right direction.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask that we shorten our questions, our answers to about no more than 45 seconds, okay, because we're coming up on our time.
I will do.
Madam Administrator, I think there's one moment, Mr. Noel. Madam Administrator, I know there's another question coming, but I think Mr. Noel wanted to respond.
Yeah, and I'll take 30 seconds, Mr. Moderator. I've actually, Ms. Liz, I've actually done this. I bought an investment property last year that I put solar on. Right now, the tenant of that property is seeing the full benefits of that solar. I did it because it was the right thing to do. I'm not going to see a dime of savings from that. The tenant is seeing the savings. It was the right thing to do because that is a long-term hold for me. It's right for the planet. It's right for the tenants. It's just the right thing to do. And I took some flack from my girlfriend for doing this, but I said, no, that's just, why, how are we going to do all these other energy efficiency upgrades to a property? You've got to lead by example. I spend my own money. It's something that will probably pay back in 15 years. But guess what? It pays back the planet every day. And that's what I want to do. That's my ethic, my environmental ethic. It ought to be what we live.
Thank you very much, Mr. Noel. As we go to the administrator to give us another question, I just want to tell Mr. Noel, I had a sneaky suspicion that Ms. Coons had something to say today. Madam Administrator. Madam Administrator, is another community question?
It is, and I just want to let us know it is 12:54. We do have another political forum at 1 o'clock and our candidates are on, there was a question to me. I wanted to just let you know, any candidates that are interested in presenting on next Monday's forum, you can email me. It's in the chat at sburns@concernedblackfergie.com. I have Mr. Ronald Allen who has a question for Mr. Noel.
Mr. Allen.
Good afternoon, Mr. Noel. Speaking from the campus of the ITC. You mentioned you had a private company. Is that a utility company? And I was just wanting to know what was your community relations record with Black and Brown communities, and would you use that record? Could we use that record as a platform to see how you would serve as public service commission?
Yeah, I think it's a valid question. I've sort of alluded to my own personal ethic of living what I preach, and my company is ultimately pretty small. A lot of our work are done by subcontractors. It just so happens my very first project as a company in 1999 was with a minority firm, a fellow with whom I developed a great friendship. And he gave me, I was his subcontractor, and he gave me one of the very first large projects I had. I'll never forget it. It was a $100,000 deal, which 20 years ago was a huge deal. And he and I, this minority contractor and I, did business on a handshake for 15 years. He's on my website right now as an endorser. Our single largest subcontractor we use for projects is a minority subcontracting firm. They do projects around the country for us. So I guess the way to say it is most of my team is our CFO is a woman. The lady who's running our company right now is a woman. So I am, I guess you'd say, extremely inclusive, and I have lived an environmental and cultural ethic of equality for all.
Thank you very much. I'm going to give both of you a minute and a half, 90 seconds, for closing statement.
I'll defer to John on the closing.
Oh, hey! Thank you, Daniel. I appreciate it, sir. I enjoy Mr. Blackman's company and always look forward to an opportunity to speak with him. Let me thank Sophia, the most delightful lady who I just spoke with and who put this together. Thank you, Ms. Sophia Burns, as Executive Director. The CBC couldn't have someone better. And thank you, Mr. Moderator, for your time. There was an old PSC commissioner, a little cagey at sometimes, but it was a guy named Mac Barber. And Mac Barber had a way of getting out of the community, touching people and helping people and being known, particularly in the African American community. And I see myself in some respects like Mr. Barber. He's the late Barber. He's passed now, but for those that remember him, they really know Mac stood up for them. And I want to do that same thing. I want to bring green jobs. My company name is Energy and Environment. Energy and Environment, a name I did 20-something years ago, before anybody was thinking about this stuff. I've been living energy, I've been living the environment for decades. And my properties run on solar power. I drive an electric car. I mean, there's a website, if you want to go to YouTube, type in "Sticking It to the Man, Noel," or Noel. And you'll get an incredible video that talks about all the stuff that I've done in my life to be environmentally friendly and to be as good as I can with the dollars and with the blessings that we have been given by God. So I want to thank the CBC's time, and encourage people to watch my town hall tomorrow night, which we're redirecting to social justice and energy equity. I'll be joined by State Representative Ahmed Holly and also Eric Allen and Julie Jordan out of Brunswick, who spoke at the Ahmed Aubrey rally. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Blackman.
Thank you so much. I wanted to make sure John finished. First and foremost, before I forget, please go to danielforgeorgia.com. That's Daniel, F-O-R, and then Georgia spelled out.com to learn more about my platform, of who I am, and what I stand for. As was mentioned earlier, my life has been built in the state of Georgia on service. I'm currently a board member of the Georgia ACLU. I was on the Supreme Court Commission in Georgia for Marriage, Family, and Children. I have served in multiple capacities because I love this state. And I've never forgotten about individuals that are around this state, don't have the same access, that don't have the same opportunities. And for the young men and women, I want to be very specific from a policy standpoint, that have to drive to McDonald's or Chick-fil-A or Burger King to sit in the parking lot and have access to wireless broadband. I hear you. To the senior citizen on a fixed income that has to decide between their medication and their utility bill, I hear you. To the working family that's out there that's struggling right now with COVID-19 to make sure that their utilities are not cut off, or that what states like Indiana are doing right now, which is thinking of ways where utility companies can recoup their losses during COVID-19 by including sneaking charges on ratepayers. I hear you. If you want a fearless public service commissioner, someone that's going to stand up for the community, someone that understands fundamentally that it's hard to get a person to understand a thing when their salary depends on them not understanding it. I will go in from day one and not only work for utility companies but hold them accountable. It's not about drawing the line in the sand. It's about making sure that we're doing everything in our power to support the infrastructure that brings all of this up in the community. Thank you to the Concerned Black Clergy, to you, Shannon, to Sophia, to my colleague, John Noel, and I'll see you on June 9th. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we want to thank again Mr. Daniel Blackman, Mr. John Noel, and we want to thank you very much, and we wish you Godspeed in this race. On behalf of our President, President Betty Howland Williams, we thank you again for taking the time and understanding the importance of communicating through the Concerned Black Clergy to our constituency and to our community folks. Godspeed to you, and thank you. Madam Administrator.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you all so much for joining us. We're at 101, gonna go into our next forum, which is going to be Fulton County District 4. Our candidates on the phone at this time